Hi guys, how you going?
Hi,
I'm here with Ginger, and
hi.
we are about to embark. We've been talking for about an hour about all kinds of things, and we just finally decided to start recording it. So we started on a subject about the salt of the earth, and
Yes,
it was based upon this image which somebody sent to me this morning. Um, which is all quite interesting anyway. So it says cordyceps mushrooms to keep the lungs strong and healthy. I don't know what that says. Shallajat to pull out heavy metals. I'm assuming they're mushrooms too. Shallajat, have you heard
I
of that?
believe so. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's not a familiar one for me.
Ginger and lemon
Ginger and
peel
lemon peel tea.
to keep the cells healthy. And then this one really jumped out at me because it said sea salt, SOL, water to keep the body electrically charged. And then I'd
Hmm.
ended up sending a message to Ginger about that because there's sea salt water, um, and why we need to keep our bodies electrically charged. I mean, what's the concept with that, and why? I mean, I was then thinking about the idea that I don't seem to get zapped as much these days, but I used to get zapped a lot. And was that the kind of metaphysical way of keeping you charged? Um, and then what did you have to
Hmm.
say about that? About the electrical? Oh yeah, you were
It
talking.
reminded me of the salt of the earth, and the acronym in my mind is SALT is an acronym for Scorpio, Aquarius, Leo, and Taurus, and those are the four fixed signs of the zodiac. And so I think that is an indication to me of where the saying comes from. We're the salt of the earth, salt of the earth. It's the
Mm,
fixed part of who we are,
mm,
and I do not think that salt is a negative. I think it's a positive. I think well, I know it's something that we use in doorways, from ancient times to ward off evil spirits and bad energy. And yeah, it's used for purification. It's used as a pure preservative. It's protective, and I do think it keeps us charged. I think it's important.
yeah,
I recently had an experience with getting some advice about my kidney, and I was encouraged by a naturopath to increase salt because it would be beneficial in my situation.
that's funny because you very rarely hear that. It's one of those like I don't know. I mean, I was told by the
It's the
doctor to
opposite to what we're told by
yeah,
mainstream medicine.
I was told by a doctor to reduce my salt intake, and when I went away and looked at that personally, and it's personal choice, I just all I did was stop drinking coffee. Uh,
Yes, it felt right to do that, I'm sure.
yeah, it just felt right to, and then it was fine. The imbalance was corrected by me stopping drinking coffee, but it's quite extreme from the point of view socially.
I
Everybody.
love coffee. Coffee is so good, and
I
it's you
know.
know
I mean, think of
it's one of my little guilty pleasures. I enjoy it every now and then,
yeah,
but
and then
I'm very aware of how much it depletes me. It's not worth it sometimes. The flavor, the aroma, I get pulled in,
and it
and
it's
I
just
can't
not the
have it.
same going out for a cup of herbal tea.
No,
Go out with
no,
a few friends to a coffee shop and having a cup of herbal tea. It just doesn't do it for me. There's something sort of
no, it's not
grunty
the
and
same.
sort of real about having a cup of nice coffee, like a latte and even if you have it made out of sort of almond milk or something like that, which sort of lessens um, I suppose, the impact of it. Still, without it, it's not quite the same. I can't do the herbal tea thing. Um,
No, it's not the same.
no,
It's a nice treat. I think the trouble for me is I want that every day. And
I
after a
know.
while, I think it takes a toll. So I do try to allow myself to have it. If I choose it, I'll have it, but a very small amount. So in the past, I would have had two or three large cups. I
Yeah.
now have like a small half of a small cup and just holding it, and smelling it, it's
Yeah,
sometimes that's plenty,
I know.
and tasting it. Sometimes I get a taste of it and I think, well, what is it that I actually liked about it anyway?
I haven't,
Because I really have given up the habit overall.
I know. Well, as long as you give it up as a habit, it's fine, but it's just interesting. All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was we went from salt of the earth on to talking about the word in the tone and the sword and the stone, which was your thing, which was how strong the concept of the word is, or how you could take over on that, and then I'll bring in the King Arthur thing.
Well, I think we cracked the code because the sword and the stone is great mystery. Not everybody can get the sword out of the stone.
Right.
And so back to the salt of the earth, we are the stones, we are the salt and the stone. And so getting the sword out, when you look at the tarot, the sword represents air, and we're in an air sign energy, whether it be Aquarius or it's still air sign, and air represents our thoughts. So the swords and the words represent our thoughts, which we now know create. And our thoughts do manifest a lot, our story. It manifests, it's the illusion that we're choosing. And so it's up to us to be very precise, I think, with our words.
But the
And when
communication
we get the
aspect,
right, yeah, so yes, because we're the commanders. We've got the reins this year, especially. We've got those two big beasts, and they're not going backwards. They're
yeah,
moving on.
yeah,
They're moving forward.
yeah,
So resistance is a bit futile, but I do think it's important for us to really get the word and the tone, to take that knowledge in, drop the S's.
yeah,
We once upon a time didn't have S's in our vocabulary,
yeah,
and it was a very different language once upon a time. You were talking about the origin of our language, Kim.
yeah. That was the hold on, before I go on to that, I wanted to talk about how the story of King Arthur is about him removing the sword from the stone. But then if you look
Yeah.
at the whole story of King Arthur, and it's all about the 12, again, the 12 knights of the round table being mimicking or depiction of there's no edges to it. It's open communication between the 12 people. It's always given that it's a benevolent society, and even though that King Arthur was actually a leader, he was not a dictatorial type of, well, he's not depicted as being dictatorial in legend. But then you've got the 12 knights, so you've got the zodiacal reference, the round table, you've got the zodiacal reference. um so it's all talking about the same story, really. It's all about the 12 signs of the zodiac, and it being round, and the
Over and
sun.
over, every story is told in the stars. There's nothing new under the sun.
And it's
It's,
it's
I think,
always 12.
important for us to know our history. Always 12. Um, Now, it's 12 2-hour awareness. I shouldn't say it's always 12 because that doesn't actually feel right, because we have, I believe, 13 lunar months. So if you look, China celebrates 13 lunar months
Yes.
before the new year.
Yeah.
And that's 28 days, and that adds up to times 13 is 360 degrees, which is a perfect circle. We know that our calendar was manipulated. And so there's certainly been an extra 5 days added. And, so to have a perfect circle, we have to really do a little bit of math and reevaluate where we're at. Um, so, but energetically, we've agreed that we're in 2023. So energy plays a big part in our experience. And when we all sort of line up with a belief, that becomes our reality.
Right. So with regards to the word in the tone and the sword in the stone, we then went on to talk about the Oera Linda book. And although I don't really want to go too heavily into that, I'm really intrigued about talking about the Yule, which is part of the Orea Linda book. So what I'll show it inside the book. So in the book, it shows you a depiction of how the Yule symbol Oh, will it show? Does this, is this showing? Can you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
Yes, and I can
so
even maybe zoom in.
right, so it's showing that the according to the Oera Linda story, they created the first numbers 0 to 9 out of the Yule symbol, and also created the alphabet. But I'm not going to talk about the alphabet, even though that's the word in the film. So if you look at that, in that Yule symbol, there is the numbers 1 to 9. So 1 would be straight the way down, 2 would be across, 3 would be like that. So you just go through each of the numbers. 4, where's 4? 4's there.
Hmm.
5 is, guess that's 5, I guess.
And
6,
those letters, the shapes of the letters in the Hebrew language, there was 22 letters in the Hebrew language that many people believe came from this wheel,
yeah, I agree.
this Oera Linda
Yeah.
belief system. So I really enjoy learning from that perspective about who we may have been. I think that that story makes a lot more sense to me.
Mhm.
But can we say that it's true? No, we can't. But can we say that it's not? No, we can't. But I do feel that it's a powerful story worth investigating.
Ginger and I have this common thing where one of the reasons that we kind of got together was on this common idea about this book being a really powerful book and having a lot of information in it. It's called the Oera Linda book, from the manuscript of the 13th century. And it's a really interesting book. And one of the cool things about it is it's written in 2 languages. So it's on one side of it, it's written in the English interpretation. And on the left-hand side of it, it's written in the original Friesland language. So just going back a little bit to when I was doing my, oh God, this is years ago, but when I was doing my, when I created my own divination system based on simplification of crop circles, and then
Mm.
putting those images onto stones, and then meditating on those symbols and creating like an interpretation as to what the symbol meant. But from that, and from other people talking about that concept, which to diversify again a bit more, I have talked about this before, but I did quite a lot of investigation into the main calendar, and the main character of that was a guy called Ian Lungold. And Ian Lungold, he died, I think, in 2007, and his name's
Mm.
Ian Zell Lungold. And really interesting concept of the main calendar. Just turn the volume off for a sec. Really interesting concept of the main calendar, but and not relative, because it's all focused around the year 2012. So it's, if you can take the dates out of it, you can get an idea of what he's talking about, as long as you don't get too fixated on, because he's focusing all around the year 2012. But the information inside of this video is absolutely humongous in relation to how he talks about the evolution of consciousness and how that relates to the pyramidal structure, and how it amplifies by 20 each time you go up and shift onto a new day, a new paradigm. I just don't know where we are on this map, but I very much firmly think that this guy has a really good story to tell. So the way that there is a reason for me discussing all of this, the way that he came across this information was because he was a jeweler in the Yucatan Peninsula. And what he was doing was he was inscribing the Mayan glyphs onto jewelry. And then as he's
Oh,
inscribing them, as he's doing the inscriptions on a daily basis, he is it's coming into his mind what the glyphs mean as he's inscribing them. So he starts having a book over to his right hand side and he starts making notations of what each of the glyphs mean according to when he's inscribing them. So it's like they're embedded in the glyph when he's rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it because he's doing it over and
well,
over and over again.
it's like a sigil. It's like a
Yeah.
sigil, that you would use to, to create provoke a certain response.
Yeah, but we didn't know
There's
this.
lucky symbols, and wow, that's pretty amazing.
We could
He
do
wouldn't have known, so he was channeling what the true meaning of it was as he was creating it.
as he was creating it, was doing that through rote, rote, through just doing the symbol and doing the symbol and doing the symbol. And then later on, he met a geologist who was studying the Mayan calendar, and a geologist, not an archaeologist who was studying the Mayan calendar, and compared his information to the information that they had, and it correlated.
Sorry,
Gee,
my doggies were having a little conversation. I muted myself just so I could hear you.
that's
I
okay.
wanted to try and muffle that sound a bit.
It's okay.
They're vocal at the moment. Yeah,
So
no, I think it's also interesting, and I think it's all connected. I think it's the same story told over and over again. What's interesting to me about the wheel from the Oera Linda is that it's six spoke, and now we're up to 12, and it's almost as though like the fractal grows, and the sacred geometry as we evolve, the wheel gets bigger. If that makes sense, that's almost how I perceive it. Like um, it was one of our earliest models. Well,
what
they're really vocal.
that's quite what one of the things is with the chakra system, um, that starts off with a 4, does it? And it gets more or is it a 6 at the root
Yeah,
chakra?
thank
Is it
you for bringing that. So the lotus has different petals, and it's the same feeling to me that the seven. So you've heard maybe about the root races, and so we've got this whole seven thing, 7 year itch. We're in a 7 year. So seven is a very powerful number. 7 days of creation. Those horses are not going backwards. Like I say, we're moving forward. So, what are we creating? What are we going to take with us on our chariot as we move into the new age? What are we creating?
and we get more and more and more and more and more complex as we move up.
Oh,
It
yes.
it starts off really, really simple, but then it
Sorry.
that's all right.
This is the oldest and the youngest, and it's something that they do every day. It's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just like it's a thing they can only understand.
That's
I'm
all
going to see
right.
if they want to go out. If you want to
Okay,
keep
okay,
going, Kim.
all right. I'll keep going.
You
Um,
want to go? Come on.
so just to bring back the idea with this being this Oera Linda book being in the language in one page and then the translation on the other side of it. When I tried to read it, I tried to read it in the older language to see if just through visually if I could read it in that, if I could make any sense out of reading it in that, and I couldn't.
Were you able?
No.
Okay. I love that you brought that up though, because our friends over at Mind Unveiled, they're getting a lot of people coming forward helping with translation. So
Right.
they are able to offer their work worldwide. So they've had it translated for France, they've had it translated for uh, in Dutch, they've had it translated, I'm sure they have it in Spanish now. And so how wonderful that we can begin to communicate worldwide and get the story sorted out once and for all. I feel like we're all our archaeologists trying to dig up the truth right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. So Anyway, it's really fascinating and really fast. What were you saying about the numbers 1 through to 10 in the Yule? Can you elucidate on that a little bit? What you were saying about the
Well, for me, it's all numbers. We were counting before we were spelling. No doubt in my mind, we would have been counting things and, do we have, how many do we have? And the wheel, that part of it, we started talking once a long time ago about sacred geometry and how the zero is the perfect circle, the 360 degrees. It's everything
yeah,
is that circle. And so the circle is also at the same time known as nothing. It's known as the fool in the tarot. It's the zero. It's nothing. And in Egyptian mythology, it's none, N-U-N. And then the next symbol that
can
we
I
would have
can I
used
stop you?
on the circle,
Can
yeah,
I stop you there? So,
yeah,
with the word nothing, right, in the
yeah.
Osho Zen Tarot, is this great interpretation of nothing,
I
and it's
love it.
called Osho
Yes,
no thing. Okay, no thingness, right? I've got to read this out to you because I
correct.
just think this is beautiful.
And that's
So,
where it all comes from. It comes from nothing. Our creation comes from nothing. It comes from a thought.
so let me read this out. Only no thingness can be infinite. Something is bound to be infinite. Only the no thingness is an infinite expansion of life, existence, possible, not out of somethingness. God is not somebody, he is nobody, or more correctly, no bodiness. God is not something, he is nothing, or even more correctly, no thingness. He is the creative void. Never for a single moment think that nothingness is a negative state, an absence. No, nothingness is simply nothingness, no thingness. Things disappear, only the ultimate substance remains. Forms disappear. Sorry. Oh, only the formlessness remains. Definitions appear, and undefined remains. The awakening of the Buddha is total, in that the total awakening, there is an luminous awareness surrounded by positive no thingness. It's not empty, it is overfull. Things have disappeared, and what has remained is inexpressible. We try to express it as blissfulness, as ecstasy, as eternal joy, but these things are just faraway echoes of the real thing. So, in relation to this no thingness, when I was about, I might have talked about this before, but when I was about 6 years of age, I lay in bed one night and I'm thinking, where did this all come from? Terrified me. I was like, how can I be here? Like, there, where did nothing come from? Because if you go to the expanse of like, okay, what was before nothing? How could how could something be? Because nothing is nothing. Like, where can nothing come from? Where can something come from? And then my mum came up to tuck me into bed, and I said to her, like, I asked her that question, and she sort of said, "Oh, Kim, like, just go to sleep." It's like, so I lay in bed at 6 years of age, wondering what was nothing, or how could nothing be?
It's the chicken and the egg question.
Yeah, yeah,
How can we ever possibly answer that?
no,
Except for now, I guess we could get right out there and say, I wonder if it's sort of, well, if it's been brought to life in some way, but it's been done through thought, I feel. It's done first through our imagination, our ability to perceive it. And if we can't perceive it, we'll never achieve it.
no,
And so I feel like, we'll only reach the limits that we set for ourselves. And we've been set with some very strong and limiting beliefs. And and I think that's what the empowerment journey is all about for us as we become more aware of our true heritage, or what could be our true heritage, like with the Oera Linda story. Makes a lot of sense to me,
right.
especially as we uncover our true genealogy. Ah, we've a lot to learn about where we actually come from.
Okay, so I interrupted you at the point of zero to say that, and
Oh,
you were
yes.
moving
So
on to
zero
one.
is, and so, you know, in the beginning there was nothing, right? There was a thought in the beginning. There was a thought, you know, and so then we have the zero with the dot in the middle. Now that represents the sun. So we now have created the sun, sun of God. And now we have the symbol for gold. So that's the zero with the dot in the center. This represents us. And that is symbolic. Leo is ruled by the sun. So this is symbolic of the heart of the lion on the zodiac man. So the heart came along. And this is also the one, the magician. And then the two is the circle split in half. And this is like a cell splitting. Now we have the duality. We have the left and right hemisphere of the brain. Everything is opposite now. We have to look at the opposite and try and, I think, you know, I think ultimately the goal for me in my mind would be to see us learn to live more in the middle, tolerant of both extremes, the left and right hemisphere, the left and right brain of thinking. And one is very emotional, obviously, and the other is quite programmed to just do without question. And
which
that
brings
that
which
has become pretty clear to me.
which brings me to something else that we were discussing, which was the concept between the creator and the creative. Like there's two lots of people in this world. There are the creative people, and then there are the consumers. So the
Yes,
consumers tend to go out to work to earn money to buy the things that the creators create. But the creators tend to create stuff to sell to the consumers. But the creators are generally not as bigger consumers as the consumers are, because the creators tend to only consume what's necessary rather than look to create in excess. Like, so the consumers would likely buy three of an item, whereas the creators would probably only buy one, because
yes,
the consumer would only
yes,
need one. Because how can you need more than you
yes.
need? How can you need three?
You don't, but you
But
might think you do. Like if you're sold, stories of shortages and things like this. So this is
exactly.
where the propaganda comes in, and you set
Yeah.
off the fear meter. And the consumers, I feel, tend to be a little more feminine, shoppers. And, it can be a real compulsion because it's kind of an act of comfort. It's soothing. It's knowing that you have, all your spices are organized. You're ready for the winter. It's the nesting.
Yeah.
And, so it's to me, it's quite a feminine act.
Yeah.
And it's coming from a place of flight or fight. And, typically, often it's coming from a place of flight or fight, where the other side of the coin is nah, antipathetic. It doesn't really care. Whatever. I'm just going to do this now. And it's just, but it also has this rhythm where everything is set to motion and it happens quite naturally. And they're in a state of rest and digest, opposed to the feminine who is in a state of flight or fight. And these would be the emotional ones that are ruled, especially ruled by the moon. So that split, that half circle is the high priestess. That's the high priestess. And you can see the two towers, you can see the black and white. You can see also in her lap, she has the word on a book, it's the Torah. And it's about that word would be on the Oera Linda wheel as well. I'm pretty sure it would fit.
Which
And
word?
yeah, the Torah,
I
I
don't.
think I remember seeing something about it the other day, the Torah on the wheel, and it is mentioned. Well, it's right there in the Tarot.
Right. That's the standard high priestess. So she's
Yeah,
got she's got the Torah on her lap, and she's got the
correct.
horns of the Taurus on her
Cor-
head, and she's got the horns of the
cor-
Taurus at her feet.
correct.
and she's got the two towers, like you said, the split in the two, the black and the white, the two levels, and bringing them into balance, which actually leads me to the other thing that we're discussing, which was this being the year of the water, and I was saying that I'd been to see the latest. I can't remember the name of it now. What's it
Mm.
called? The uh,
Avatar.
Avatar. I'd been to see the latest. I'd seen it in 3D a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago.
That'd be so cool to see it in 3D. I've heard really cool things about the movie. People have had really powerful responses to it, but it would have been really amazing to see in 3D, Kim.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I mean, the story is nothing, but the graphics and the sheer, immersibility of being in this thing, and it goes on for like 3 hours and 10 minutes, so it's really immersive. You really get to be part of it. Anyway, I'm not getting paid by them, so I'm not going to tell you too much about
That's fair.
it.
We're also not getting paid by a couple of other artists, but I noticed a couple of really big songs came out recently. Speaking of Year of the Water Rabbit, it seemed very rabbit-like when I watched a new song named Hope, and it's performed by an artist that calls himself NF, the letters N and F. And so, yeah, that might be interesting to look at for anybody looking for symbols of, what are they trying to tell us these days? I saw a young man standing out in the middle of, it's like, it was powerful. It was the divine masculine rising.
Wow.
And I do think that's an important thing as well. It's not just about the feminine, it's about both left and right. We have to come together and work as one. We won't be able to do this alone. And this is, I think, the time that we're in. The black and white horses on the chariot, it's all, for me, it's so clear on which direction we're moving. And the other song was Macklemore Chant. Both of them had a tremendous amount of water rabbit energy from my point of view.
Is that Macklemore chant? I'll link both of these for you guys to watch because I can't play them because of
Yeah.
Macklemore. Macklemore?
It's Makelmore. And yeah, he's quite an interesting artist, and his newest song is Chant. And I think that's interesting because as we're seeing this revival in Kentucky, have you seen it, Kim? Are you aware
I,
of it?
I don't. You actually sent me a video of it about a week ago, and
Yes.
I watched it, and I actually thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. But then, because you can kind of feel the energy of it, you can keep kind of, and you can kind of see the people. They're like entranced in it. So I've actually got that up. I'm going to play you a little bit of that, but I'm not going to play very much of it because of copyright, obviously. So I've got it.
I'm getting
I got to
one
share.
great big hit about the whole thing, and it's from a movie, and I just keep hearing it over and over again every time I see the visuals. And I think, I'm sad to say it because it's nice to see people come together and sing so beautifully. There's a part of me that this really speaks to, and but there's another part of me that has a great amount of concern about the word and the tone and the sword and the stone and what's provoking this energy, you know.
And like I said, we were talking about it earlier, and we're talking about the concept with the capacity of religion to alter the mind perspective, and the idea that when they purposely built these churches, they built them with altars in them. They built them they named the utilities inside of the church in alignment with that. They're telling you what you're doing. They're telling you what they have the capacity to do. And also, it also sort of has, in some way, I think, come off the back of this desperation in everybody that was triggered by what we've lived through in the last 2 to 3 years. It's triggered a desperation in us that we want something to happen to put it right. And a lot of people talk about the thing that needs to happen is about community. A lot of people talk about that. And I think that this type of thing actually gives you that, but there isn't anything concrete about it. There isn't anything.
Thank you for saying that. It's not enough. We have to look and doing things that we haven't yet done. What is it that we can do differently? And so while they're doing what they think they should do, and it is beautiful to see people gather like this,
Yeah,
it's not building recreation for children, and especially highly sensitive children. And this is a challenge that I'm putting out to everyone. What are we doing for the children? Are we just going to allow them to be brainwashed? Here in Canada, we've got spy balloons. We've got spy balloons now from 1950 because the devices in our phone made in China, that's not enough spy tech. But our children are buying this propaganda. So when do we start creating really serious opportunities for children to break free of that brainwashing? And so that's one challenge that I've got. And I do think it's important for us to build that community. I think it's important for us to gather with like-minded and show up as we can in our community. Do whatever you can to bring light and comfort those that need it,
yeah.
and just do what you can, because it all matters, every little bit. Don't think that yours doesn't count. Every drop counts. So it's important for us to get creative, I think, and not do what we've always done. And this is following. And so this is what we always did in these buildings. We gathered, but then we waited for somebody else to lead us, and we didn't ask questions. So for me, it still has an element of sadness to it, because I think that if somebody were to walk in there and lead, they would follow. And they're missing the whole point of the spiritual journey. It's about being authentic and true to your highest authority. And that's not somebody standing on an altar.
No, exactly. And it seems to take you away and put you into a trance and make you think that you're in utopia, or make you think that you're connected to something. And it's nice, but once you walk away from it, the reality that you're living in is still there. You still got the real
The
world to
song,
face up to. So
that's right. That's right. It's still, now when you leave there, you can't do that forever, or can you? Like they were looking like they were going to do in that movie with Bette Midler, Hocus Pocus,
yeah,
the first one. And I've been sort of like knowing that there would be a hit that would remind us of this movie. And they did
yeah,
a remake a little while ago.
yeah,
And here we are witnessing scenes from that first movie when the adults were in the auditorium all dressed up in their costumes, and can't stop dancing.
yeah,
And the children are screaming, cover your ears, cover your
yeah,
ears.
yeah,
So back to the words and the tones,
yeah,
what is happening there? Why
yeah.
can't they pull themselves away?
I know. I went out with a few
I don't
friends.
know. I
I,
just can't get that song out of my head whenever I see it. Sorry. It
I went out with a few friends
just
yesterday,
seems
and
awfully strange.
they were talking about an old movie. They've been watching an old movie called Rebecca. It's
Oh,
available on YouTube. Um, and weirdly enough, part of it's filmed in um a place that I used to live in Cornwall called Polruan, a really little village. Um,
hmm.
anyway, they were talking about this film Rebecca. It's a black and white movie. It's and apparently it's on YouTube. I'll have a look for it. But they
Oh,
were saying that it's a really good movie to watch because it depicts a woman who is being um, hoodwinked by reality. It just shows how she thinks something is the way it is. So they were talking about it yesterday, and I thought, oh, I've got a old movie. So I'll have a look at that and see if I
well,
can
I
find
mean,
that.
there's so much that we know about altering a person's perception, and
Yeah, this one, I'll
how
put
do
it.
we know it's a table? We just decided it would be called a table, and we agreed that it would be a table. There's no evidence. There's no proof that it's a table. We just all decided it would be a table.
I'll give you a link to that one as well. But that's 2 hours long. It's an Alfred Hitchcock. But
That's
quite
great, Rebecca. I'll look for that.
okay. I'll give you a link to it at the bottom of the video. So I don't know why I brought that into it, but it was just that whilst it was here, I remembered about it. Um, and then on the Yule thing, I distracted you at the point of the high priestess. But
Yes, and
the high priestess is five. She 5 or 6? No, 6 is a
she's
hermit.
two. She's two.
She's
So I
two,
feel as though
really?
in 1999 we exited the millennium of the magician, and the hence the illusions, right? And the Great
Right.
Awakening.
Yeah.
So we can't be tricked anymore, and
Yeah.
we have this wisdom that comes along with being in the energy of the high priestess, which is,
Two.
the beginning of this millennium was in Y2K.
And
And
then in 2002 we got Twin Towers.
well,
Was that
yes. Was it
2001?
2002?
2001. No, it's one. It was the first year.
2001. Well, 9/11 is said to be 7/11, actually, because they've said to be adding 2 months to our
But
calendar.
I mean,
And
one
so it
thing
would
that
actually be 7/11,
one
which
thing
is powerful numbers of creation.
I mean, that 9/11 thing, the thing that blew me away more than anything is that's the emergency number that you dial on your phone, 911.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's not
Nine-one-one.
in Australia it's 000, and in England it's 999.
Well, it's as though here we're in some sort of social experiment, and they try to put this sort of
Yeah,
thing in our
yeah,
awareness.
it's
And
hocus
it's the same
pocus.
as with this hocus pocus,
Yeah,
they put it in our awareness in a
yeah,
movie, and now some of us can see it playing out live time,
yeah.
while others are flocking from around the world to find, their true connection to spirit. They don't have to leave their house, stay put, take a
Hmm.
deep breath, and really get serious about taking the blinders off.
Hmm.
Get closer to the middle. Don't be so sure you know the way. Just because this is what we were told doesn't mean that's how it actually works. Become curious. This is why I think I keep calling for that. Like, maybe you're wrong. Where does that belief actually come from? Does it actually work? Or is there a theory that maybe breaks that apart? It's important, I think, that we are curious and not so certain about anything. Like,
Anyway,
I wondered earlier when we were talking about the flood from the Oera Linda, I wondered about the Black Forest. I'm sort of geographically challenged, but when we were talking, it hit me that I wonder if the Black Forest was somehow became black due to the waters, the high waters in Germany. I don't know. I don't know. It was all in and around that area. And there's another video that I sent you from
it's
Stephen J.D. Beatty.
it's not
This
the
man has been doing a lot of research about Albion and our true origin also. It's regarding Doggerland, and I think it all kind of fits with the Oera Linda story.
the Doggerland thing and the whole. I mean, I think we need to do an entirely different video on this because we could go on for hours about this.
Ah,
Because
yes, I
I
agree.
showed you earlier this stuff here. It's a whole another paradigm, but basically the Oera Linda book basically is about this continent here. It stems from supposedly this continent here, which was a continent called Friesland, which is a continent that was depicted on maps up till about 1580, 1590.
And that's how
Uh,
you first became curious about it. Is that right,
yeah,
Kim?
yeah, that's how I found
Because
the
you
Orea Linda
collect
book.
old maps. You've
Yeah,
always liked old maps.
yeah. So it and seeing this on a map, seeing this place, this country on this maps, and going, what's that country? Never seen that before. It's not supposed to be there. And then when you investigate it, the oligarchy give it. They say it exists on old maps for the purposes of that the cartographers at that time just copied each other's, and one person put it on there, and then everybody put it on there because it was too hard for them to go out and look to see if there was actually a place there. But there There wasn't ever an island there. They just made it, they just got it wrong when they did the maps, which is fine, other than it exists on every map created before 1590s. I mean, this is all really, anyway, but this is a whole different subject. But that's what led me to the Oera
Well, and
Linda
I
book.
think that really hits because, the timing of that really hits because of 666. That year really intuitively hits for me. I feel as though that's the year they rewrote history, added the one, and with this is where we gained 1,000 years on our timeline.
Yeah,
I do not think that we don't know. What the best answer I think any of us can give is that we just don't know what day it is.
no,
Ah,
no, I don't. I've got no idea what day it is. All right,
no.
all right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut up now and not say any more. I think we
But
should.
I'd like to talk about that some more. I think it's a really great subject, and
Uh,
hopefully people will check out that, the book, or even, Kat the Fryan. Her name is Kat, the Fryan, Fryan.
yeah,
She's got a great audio book version for anybody that wants to listen.
actually,
And
I've never heard
yeah,
that. I
oh yeah,
I liked getting the physical copy of it because it's in both languages, and I find that absolutely fascinating. The fact that you can read language either it in either language is kind of it's I don't know, a bit stimulating, a bit
you can
different.
learn. It's
Yeah,
learning too.
yeah,
It's seeing, and
yeah.
then it starts to become very familiar, and we become a part of that language. It becomes a part of who we are now.
And regardless of whether it's a fiction or it's not a fiction, it doesn't really matter because it just opens your minds to a different. I mean, it's basically a matriarchal society, and it's actually a quite
Yes,
different view of how to look at it, how to look at what. I mean, one of the things about we're definitely in a patriarchal society at the moment, but they depict, if they're talking about a matriarchal society, they always depict them as like big, strong Amazonian women that can beat the shit out of you, or it's like a masculine perspective of a matriarchal perspective. Like, oh yes, we had societies that were run by matriarchal people, but these were big, strong women, and they could fight, and they were on horseback, and they always depict them as sort of that masculine destruction mentality. Whereas, and I'm not saying that all males are destructive, but it's a very masculine thing to want to dominate, to want to push out the opposition, to want to overcome the opposition.
it
Um,
would have come from a place of perhaps desperation,
yeah.
I
Well,
feel, or um, Freya. I mean, this is the daughter of
mm,
who? Who is she the daughter of? I think she's the daughter of Creator,
she's
if
the
I'm not
duck.
mistaken.
Yeah, and
She's the
they've
she's
got a
the
different
daughter of
name.
Creator.
They've got a different name for the creator. Is begins with a
Freya,
W.
Freya.
W. Who is it?
Oh, Ralda,
No,
Wralda,
no.
Ralda,
Ralda. Oh no, Ralda's somebody else.
Ralda.
No, Ralda's somebody else. Um,
There's
I
some
don't.
speculation that that's for the world, Ralda,
Yeah, could be.
meaning
Anyway,
the world.
uh,
And so Freya is Friday. Freya is Venus, and Venus is the morning star. Venus is Lucifer, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. And we've got the morning and the evening stars. So she brings with her the high priestess, again, sacred geometry. She brings with her that duality,
yeah.
the left and the right. And which side are we pulled by? Well, at that time, they were obviously pulled by the masculine need for, having order over chaos. And they took that responsibility.
What I
And the
loved
men,
about
the
the
men
book,
supported that. I feel like the men acknowledged the women's amazing intuitive gifts,
yeah,
and they valued them, and
yeah,
that they allowed the women to lead because they could have clearly
yeah,
overpowered them,
yeah,
but
exactly.
they valued the woman's input and they allowed the female to lead. So I feel like that was quite a that's the experience that I'm sort of expecting for us in the future.
Yes.
This is why I say, like, she's holding the Torah in the middle. And I feel like, asking us to be in the middle by
Yes.
learning more about the Torah.
Yes.
And it's very well represented in the Torah.
Yes. I agree. Right. I'm really going to cut it off, otherwise it'll be too long for anybody to listen to. So let's come back to
We
the
could go
Orea
for days.
Linda for a different on a different day about that discussion, because that book is it's just an amazing, if it's regardless of whether it's true or not, it's an amazing perspective. And we'll talk about it more. But I'm going to cut it off there.
Awesome.
Anything else you want to say, Ginger, before we go?
I think we covered a lot, and no, just a lot of fun. And what an interesting time. Just stay curious and have fun.
Yeah.
Keep your vibe high.
Yeah.
Do what you can. Every little bit matters. Even if it's just a phone call for someone, like just whatever you can to bring a little light,
Yeah.
it all counts. It all
Yeah.
counts. And we've got this.
So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk soon. See ya.
So
Bye.
fun. Bye.
Bye. Hmm, I've got to cut you off now. How do I do that? One
I'm
sec.
not sure.
And oh, oh no.
Well, what do you want to talk about then?
I can't. Oh, you go. Oh, you go. Bye.